All right, we're a little bit late here with the top 10 albums of February, and it was a pretty decent month for releases. A lot of great picks here to talk about. I wouldn't say as much overflow as there was with January, but you will find a lot of people still talking about Worm's new album. It was just fine. Diabolus Mecum Sempitern is a great album that should have been included here, but there was just too much to talk about. Same goes for Dwell Not and Atmospheric Blackened Doom kind of thing. So otherwise, here is the sort of full layout, the spread, if you will, of the 10 albums I would recommend for February. A lot of great stuff here, a lot of death metal here, a lot of black metal here, not a lot of variation. Otherwise, in the coming months, we'll see a lot more outside of the black death and sort of thrash sphere. But for now, this is what we're getting to. And to start with number 10, we have Prison of Mirrors, De Sepulchris Occultus Igni Profanationis, and this is an Italian black metal band. This is Icelandic inspired sound that has some Decibel Omega in there too. These are two enormous tracks and a really interesting, evocative sort of soundscape happening within this otherwise aggressive black metal record. They put out an EP several years ago, and this is kind of the follow up to it. It's making that sound bigger, more intense, a little bit more raw, and I think they've done a great job with this record. I didn't see a lot of people talking about it, but I think it's worth going back to if you're a fan of dissonant black metal. At number 9, we have Mayhem's Liturgy of Death. Now, this is the seventh full length album from the band. All of their albums are pretty different. In general, as a trend, you'll find they'll pivot off of each last album. This is one of the first times where they've produced something that is very similar to the previous album. It is polished in terms of the production values. It's kind of the most normal record Mayhem have ever put out. At number 8, we get Insanguinate's Death Saturnalia. This is the second full length album from a band that started out as more of a death metal band, and they've transformed into something that is sort of bestial in the way that Dejial was, but also a little bit kind of rock oriented, like Tribulation was before they moved to a major label. And so we get an interesting balance between melodic black death metal and bestial death metal and black metal in general. And all of it is heavily influenced by Swedish music. Revenge from Beyond is the debut EP from Hating Life. This is a side project from members of Ataraxy and is heavily influenced by Grave. That's really all you need to know. This is classic Swedish death metal sounds transformed into something that is a little bit more atmospheric, thoughtful, and pushes those demo era ideas from the late 80s and early 90s into their own kind of sound. And I think it'll both be interesting to fans of Ataraxy as well as fans of just Swedish death metal. Really liked this record, and it got me listening to a lot of those old 80s Swedish death metal demos in the process. I don't think you could ask for a better result from a band from their fifth full length album, as you will find here on Enui's Kroba. This is a funeral death doom metal band who have moved a little bit further away from death metal that we'd found on the previous record and something which is more heavily atmospheric, almost gothic in its weight, but not fully leaning into like a melodic death doom metal sound. And so what we get here is something that is undeniably funeral doom, maybe a little bit less death metal, but still heavy and imposing, and just, as I say in the review, sonically rich beyond belief. At number 5, we have Swedish death metal band Speglas's Endarkenment Being Death. This is their debut full-length album, and they follow up to a lot of their quite strong EP releases that kind of coincided with their involvement with Swevin, the kind of follow-up to Morbus Chron. The gist of it is that their sound would appeal to fans of the two most recent Chapel of Disease records, as well as Tribulation's The Formulas of Death. At number 4, we have Fossilization's Advent of Wounds. This is the, I believe, second full-length album from the band. They're Brazil-based. I think if you're a fan of the way that Crypt distorts that sound, and you're also a fan of Dead Congregation, you'll appreciate a lot of what this record does. But if you're a fan of like Immolation, there are a lot of more immediate and almost dissonant movements on this record that keep it interesting. At number 3, you have Koskrad's Carving the Causeway to the Other World. This is the second full-length album from the band. The first one was kind of maniac. It was all over the place. It was heavily atmospheric. It was bestial. It was destructive. It was hard to predict. And a lot of those traits carry over to this record. It's just that it has much slicker production values. It has many more riffs to attack with, and it really finds a bit more focus. Before they were like an amorphous attack of ancient ghosts, and now they are still that, but there are riffs here that you can pick out, and really great drumming on this record that I think was a little bit buried on some of the previous stuff. At number 2, we have De Pint from Misotheus to this Norwegian band is definitely representative of the Trondheim way, in that there's a real simplicity to the way that they approach albums. They're fairly short, and they're focused in on creating an atmosphere that runs through the entirety of the album, and they're presented on very cleanly between two different sides. I want to hesitate to say if this is their best album ever, because I think they all kind of bleed together in a way, and they've been very consistent. But as a third album, I think they're doing a great job of keeping this sound interesting and bringing something different to the orthodox black metal influenced arena. At number one, there could be no other choice here. I think that Cryptic Shift's second full length album, Over Space and Super Time, is an immense record. It's one of my highest rated of the year so far. There's progressive death metal here. There's technical thrash metal. There's jazz fusion and prog rock influenced movements. There's what sounds like improvised, jammed sessions that turned into written songs. And it flows together in this crazy way that represents the science fiction based theme that runs through the whole thing. It's an enormous album, extremely entertaining, as well as just deep to wherever you want to pick at it. There's depth to whatever they're showing here, and every part of the album, the packaging, all of it, really finely detailed to a very high standard. A lot of enthusiasm about this record, and I think it's really a feat that they definitely put work into, and I really appreciate when bands make something special rather than just churn out shit year after year. So thanks for checking out the top 10 of the month in February. A little late with this one. I'll be a lot faster with Marches. That's coming up here in about a week. Check that out when it drops. Follow on whatever social media you're on or whatever, and check out the site when you can. A lot of new reviews every day.